California. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, a phantom terrorized quiet suburban neighborhoods. He was a prolific burglar, rapist, and serial killer who operated with absolute impunity, leaving an entire state paralyzed by fear. And then, he vanished into thin air, leaving behind a mystery that would baffle investigators for decades. The killer operated across fragmented municipal boundaries. To begin with the background, this case originates in the 1970s and 1980s, when a prolific offender committed a series of violent crimes across multiple counties in California. In 1986, the crimes abruptly stopped and the offender vanished without a trace. However, he left behind critical biological evidence. While investigators carefully preserved these crimes in DNA, the forensic technology of the 1980s was simply not advanced enough to identify him, leaving the evidence frozen in storage for decades. Next, let's look at the primary challenges that kept this case cold for over 40 years. The fundamental issue was a technological deadlock. Investigators ran the killer's DNA profile through CODIS, the National Law Enforcement Database, millions of times, but always got zero matches. This highlights a major limitation of traditional forensics, where criminal databases only work if the offender already has a prior felony conviction on file. Because this killer had no prior record, the system was entirely useless, leading to a complete dead end. This brings us to a unique feature of this case. What makes the Golden State Killer investigation a historic milestone is how the deadlock was finally broken. In 2018, investigators decided to bypass traditional police databases entirely. Instead, they took an unprecedented gamble by turning to cutting-edge 21st century DNA technology. This became the first major criminal case in global history to be solved using public genetic networks, establishing an entirely new blueprint for modern forensic science.
Imagine this: a serial predator terrorized California for more than a decade. He commits over 50 rapes and 13 murders before vanishing without a trace. Investigators carefully preserve biological evidence, including semen samples collected from multiple crime scenes. When modern DNA technology becomes available, forensic scientists generate DNA profile and discover something chilling. The DNA from different victims all belong to the same man. Then they know they were hunting one killer, but when they searched the FBI National DNA Database, known as CODIS, they found nothing. The killer had never been arrested for a crime requiring DNA collection. It was as if he had simply vanished from history. With every traditional method as ousted, forensic scientists took a revolutionary step. They introduced forensic genetic genealogy, or FGG. Unlike CODIS, which use short tandem repeats or STRs for direct identification, FGG analyzed single nucleotide polymorphisms known as SNPs, which is millions of tiny genetic variations inherited from our parents. These genetic markers not just identify a person, but they can reveal entire family connection. Scientists converted the unknown killer DNA into an SNP profile and uploaded it to the GED Match, a public genealogy database where people voluntarily share their DNA to explore their ancestry. However, the system did not find a direct match, but it identified individuals who shared segments of DNA with the suspect. These shared segments are known as identical by descent, or IBD. IBD segments show that the individuals share a common ancestor, meaning even distant relatives, such as third or fourth cousin, can be identified through this method. Using these tiny genetic clues, investigators reconstructed an enormous family tree spanning multiple generations. Birth certificates, marriage records, military records, census documents, and historical archives were painstakingly connected like pieces of a massive puzzle. One by one, entire family branches were eliminated until only one name remained: Joseph James DeAngelo. But genealogy alone could never prove guilt. Detective secretly followed D'Angelo and collected DNA from items he had discarded. Forensic laboratories compared this DNA with the biological evidence preserved from crime scenes decades earlier. The result was undeniable, a perfect match. After more than 40 years of silence, the DNA had finally spoken. Hence, the Golden State Killer case forever changed forensic science. It proved that the DNA is no longer just a tool for identifying suspects, it can reveal hidden family histories, solve decades-old cold cases, and also expose criminals who believe time had erased their crime.
To solve the Golden State Killer case, investigators adopt an innovative investigative strategy known as genetic genealogy. Instead of searching traditional criminal DNA database, they upload a crime scene DNA profile to public ancestry website. This allows them to identify distant relatives of the unknown suspect. Using these genetic connections, investigators construct a large family tree spanning several generations. By analyzing family relationship, geographical location, age, and other background information, they gradually narrow down the list of potential suspects until they identify Joseph James D'Angelo as the most likely individual. However, genealogy evidence alone was not sufficient for an arrest. Therefore, investigators need direct DNA evidence to confirm their finding. Undercover officer conducts surveillance on D'Angelo and secretly collected discarded DNA samples from items he had touched, including a piece of used tissue that D'Angelo had thrown into a trash can outside his home. Besides, investigators subtly swept the door handle of his car while it was parked outside a hobby shop. This yield touch DNA since the skin cell left behind by contact. The collected DNA was then compared with the DNA recovered from the original crime scene. The results show a perfect match, providing conclusive forensic evidence. This led to D'Angelo arrest in April 2018 and demonstrate how genetic genealogy can be successfully combined with forensic DNA analysis to solve cold cases that had remained unsolved for decades. This case revolutionized forensic investigations by demonstrating the effectiveness of genetic genealogy in identifying suspects when conventional investigative methods had failed.
By utilizing forensic genetic genealogy to map out public family trees, investigators finally accomplished the impossible. By meticulously cross-referencing family relationships, geographical locations, and age range, they narrowed a massive list of potential individuals down to just one primary suspect, Joseph James D'Angelo. However, genealogical data alone was not enough to make a legal arrest. Investigators needed direct, undeniable DNA evidence to secure their case. Undercover officers immediately placed D'Angelo under tight surveillance, waiting for an opportunity to harvest his biological signature without his knowledge. The breakthrough came from the ordinary objects he interacted with. First, surveillance team secretly retrieved a piece of used tissue that D'Angelo had thrown into a trash can outside his home. Next, while his vehicle was parked outside a local hobby shop, officers subtly swapped the car door handle, successfully capturing the touch DNA left behind by his skin cells. These covertly acquired samples were rushed to the forensic lab for immediate testing. Forensic scientists compared the newly obtained DNA profile directly against the biological signature recovered from the original decades-old crime scenes. The analysis came back with definitive results. A perfect match. The silent witness, frozen in cold storage for 40 years, had finally spoken, providing the absolute forensic proof required by law enforcement. Backed by a flawless DNA match, investigators moved in. In April 2018, Joseph James D'Angelo was finally officially arrested and taken into custody, shattering a 40-year investigative deadline. His historic arrest provided the ultimate, concrete outcome to the manhunt, proving that public network biology could be successfully combined with traditional forensic science to bring a prolific suspect to justice. Looking back at the decades-long hunt for the Golden State Killer, we see a case that defined both the severe limitations and the ultimate triumphs of forensic science. For 40 years, an entire state was left paralyzed by a phantom who exploited fragmented police jurisdictions. When traditional tools like POTUS hit an absolute dead end, the case seemed destined to remain a permanent mystery, frozen in cold storage alongside the DNA of an unidentified monster. What makes the story a historic milestone is not just that the killer was caught, but how he was caught. By taking an unprecedented gamble on forensic genetic genealogy, investigators completely rewrote the rules of criminal justice. They proved that open-source ancestry databases and public network biology could do what traditional police work could not: trace an invisible thread through generations of family trees to unmask a ghost. The ultimate arrest of Joseph James DeAngelo in 2018 delivered something far greater than a poster file. It delivered a long overdue sense of peace to the victims and their families who had waited a lifetime for answers. It demonstrated to the world that no matter how much time passes and no matter how deep a criminal burrows into anonymity, science can bridge the gap between generations to demand accountability. In conclusion, the Golden State Killer case forever changed the landscape of modern criminology. He thought he had committed the perfect crimes, but in the end, this case will be remembered not for the terror he inflicted, but as the revolutionary milestone that ensured future killers have absolutely nowhere left to hide.